Tonight was our second class on chapter 34 of Tanya. It was actually our 100th Zoom class tonight. And we did the bulk of the chapter, basically saying, well, we want to be God's home. How do we be God's home? Learn Jewish law. Great. And what about the rest of the day? And the Rebbe gave us one solution and a second and a modification of that. And really, we can be God's home all day long. Amazing, amazing gift. Amazing gift to know how. If you find this useful, pertinent, relevant, please share with someone else who can enjoy, and please subscribe. So we could dedicate the class to Tinok ben Sarah Rachel. That obviously for newborn, he should have all the brachas and already start his Torah career young. And our Torah learning should help inspire him in his Torah learning and all the good he's going to do to turn over this world and bring Mashiach now. So we are in chapter 34. We began chapter 34 last week. And we said that chapter 34 is a direct continuation of chapter 33, which is nice, of course. That makes sense. What's the direct continuation? They actually seem to be very different chapters. Well, the direct continuation is both of them have the same goal. The goal is you should be God's home. Both of them have the same premise. You're not feeling so good. You're down. You're blah. You're, winter's coming. You turn around. It's already dark. It's cold for those of us that live in Chicago. So you need something to pick you up. Well, what picks you up more than God? What picks you up more than feeling you're one with God? What picks you up more than feeling that you're making a difference to the world? So that's the perspective of chapter 33 and 34. Of course, the very major difference of these two chapters is that chapter 33, if we'll call it much more philosophical, much more cerebral, chapter 33 is demanding us to think, to meditate, to contemplate, to do inner work, lots of very non-American things here, but really change on the inside and really internalize our belief in the unity of God. For when we internalize our belief in the unity of God, everything changes. Then we're so full of joy because we're doing the impossible, and that's quite exhilarating. We're becoming God's home, which makes us feel so wow. And not just one with God. I'm the palace. I'm the palace of God. So it gives us so much joy, like a euphoria. And it's a constant situation as long as I'm internalizing my belief in the absolute oneness of God. So it's amazing. The downside is it's a lot of inner work. So comes chapter 34 and says, there are simpler ways to achieve the same goal of being God's home. Again, in the previous chapter, you're doing something so impossible. So when you do it, it feels so great. You're doing the purpose of creation. When you do that, it's like unbelievable. But making yourself God's home is the purpose of creation. So whatever the road is, like, we talk about all those roads getting to Rome, whatever the road is, if you are God's home, you are still achieving a foundational purpose of creation because God created this whole, not just this world, all the worlds, all the physical Milky Way galaxy, all the spiritual worlds, in essence, to have a home. And you're giving him one. So that's a pretty amazing accomplishment. And therefore, it feels really good. So it's you being God's home, and it feels really good. So how are we doing it? So we reached last class, just getting through the introduction and sort of the historical overview on this, was through the study of Jewish law. It's very interesting that I don't think anything more inspires the study of Jewish law than Hasidic thought, which is sort of like an interesting oxymoron. But truly, there are so many places in Hasidic thought, which is talking about the spiritual dimension, that we focus on the absolute specialness of the study of Jewish law. Because if you don't have the Hasidic dimension, Jewish law is studied to know what to do. And once you know what to do, you can move on. You don't have to restudy something that you know so well, or you don't have to study things that have no practical relevance to your life, because Jewish law is a functional tool, as versus Talmud, which might be more like intellectually engaging, or Hasidus, which is spiritually inspiring. Jewish law is to know what to do. You know what to do, great, move on. Hasidus says, no. Jewish law is teaching you what to do. And all Jewish law that is seemingly completely irrelevant to your practical life is great for you. And all Jewish law that you already know and you've mastered, study it. Why? Because, and this is the point we began explaining last class, specifically in Jewish law, God is found in a way unlike in any other dimension, including any other body of study. Meaning, we connect to God through his commandments. And we connect to God through the study of Torah. And of course, the study of Torah is a commandment, but since it's so unique and special, it takes up so much space, we almost view it as like there's commandments and Torah. And really, as we will delve more into in the next chapters, not in this one, there's a lot of differences between the two. Though, of course, the study of Torah is a commandment, but truly in terms of your personal relationship to God, Torah far outstrips any commandment. Nothing gets you closer to God than Torah. But of course, the commandments are very important because through the commandments, we change the world. And that is sort of why we're here. So we study Torah to have this intense personal connection with God, like really rev us up, and then go and change the world with a lot of commandments. Within the study of Torah, Jewish law is like nothing else. Why? Because all of Torah is God's will and wisdom. All of Torah. But exclusive of the study of law, God's will is not so overt. If I'm studying a piece of Hasidic thought, I'm studying a chapter of Tanya, I'm studying a midrash, I'm studying the Torah portion with a Rashi commentary, I'm studying a piece of Talmud. I'm studying and my mind is absorbing the wisdom of God, but it's not as clear to me exactly what his will is in this situation. It's a study, it's conceptual, it's knowledge. But in Jewish law, I'm touching his will every single thing I study. Because everything in Jewish law is about God's will. I want it like that, and I don't want it like that. This time, this place, this dimension, this measurement, every one of those nuances of detail is all God's will. Or as it's explained later in Tanya, when we come back to this idea of Jewish law, it's all God's emotions. I like this and I don't like this, and I like it done like this, and I like it done at this time, I like it done in this situation, I like it done with these coordinates. And I don't like it like that, I don't like it like that, I don't like it like that. So when we study Jewish law, we are not only connecting to God's intellect as we are connecting to in every part of Torah, but we are in a more overt way than anything else, really being one with his will. Really being one with his desire. I want it and like this. I don't want it like this. So in a way that we don't find in any other portion of Torah, we and God's wants, his emotions, his will are one in the study of Jewish law. And that's what's so unique and special about it. There are also, of course, other advantages to Jewish law. And again, other places in Tanya discuss Jewish law and also bring out how Jewish law is unique, for example, that it's the most understandable part of any Torah. It's very graspable. You know, if you're discussing the milk and the meat and the chicken soup, well, you know what chicken soup is, you know what milk is, you know what meat is. These are very, very tangible concepts and you really get a grip on them. As versus anything else, which is more or less more abstract, more spiritual, more mystical, more remote, where you can study the concepts, you can be able to say the concepts, be able to talk about the concepts. You don't have a real grip on them. You don't have what we call grasping the essence point, because these are abstract ideas. But Jewish law is practical. It's the fabric of our physical lives. And therefore, more than in any other study, we really get it. We understand exactly what it's talking about. And that too is an advantage of Jewish law, that we really are gripping it on its inside. And there are, of course, other advantages as well. So for all of these reasons, the Rebbe is saying, our sages said in the Talmud, that since the destruction of the temple, God's home is in Jewish law. God only has these 4 cubits. An amma is a measurement in Jewish law. Roughly, we would say about 1.5 feet. So what do you mean God only has the 4 amos, approximately 6 feet of Jewish law? What are the 6 feet of Jewish law? So as I think I mentioned last week, Hasidus explains this piece of Talmud, of Gemara, to mean the 4 amos symbolize the 4 letters of God's most essence name. That God's essence name, God's highest dimension of self, that's what's in Jewish law. And that's what we're grasping in a very essence way when we study it. And therefore, this is very practically applicable. Study. And as you study, again, if you are spaced out and you're reading words and it's gibberish in your brain because your brain's tired and overloaded, well, that's not called study. But as long as you understand it, and this is the most understandable part of Torah, so we all can understand it, very user-friendly. You can find it, I'm sure, in any language you need. You can find it online. You can find it in a book. You can find it in a video or an audio. As you are studying Jewish law, you are making yourself God's home. God created this world and he craves a home. If you craved a home, you know why? You're mirroring God's craving for a home. God craves a home. And when we study Jewish law, we give him what he wants. We have become his palace. His home is inside of us. Any thoughts or questions on any of that, or anything that anyone did over the week because of that? All right. So let us continue. Of course, what we questioned last week when we were like so inspired and all ready to open up our Jewish law books is, all right, so what happens the rest of the day? So we said, that's what we're going to be discussing today. And of course, we all had high motivation to come to class today because we probably spent a week thinking about it. So now we're getting our answer. So we are in chapter 34, and we are about 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines from the bottom of the page. So we just said that the sages said that since the destruction of the Talmud, God's home is in Jewish law. And again, if you remember contextually, we were discussing, we spoke about the giving of the Torah, about the tabernacle, about the first temple, about the second temple, and then like, wait, where's God's home? In Jewish law. Why Jewish law over anything else in this entire world? Because specifically, uniquely in Jewish law, we have God's will and wisdom as they're engraved in the laws that are laid out before us. Which again means, you know it already, you're still becoming God's home. This is not practically applicable, you're still becoming God's home. Tremendous advantages beyond to know what to do. And again, when we're saying, well, all of Torah is God's wisdom and covertly his will, but here we are overtly his will, you could say, well, wisdom, will. I think wisdom sounds like better. But actually, according to Hasidic thought, will is higher, is more supreme, is closer to essence than wisdom. Meaning in the Hasidic hierarchy, which applies to God and mirroring that applies to us as well. Our deepest expression of self is what we have pleasure. From our pleasure, the next level is our will, because we will what we have pleasure. And then after that is our intellect, as our intellect is going to modify itself as per our will, as per our pleasure, and then our emotions, and then our actions. So therefore, all of Torah is God's wisdom over, but the will is even higher. So the fact that in Jewish law, we overtly touch, connect, know, are one with his will, that's why here God is found more than anywhere else, because will is a more inner dimension of self, even than wisdom. So in a practical way, you could think, once you want something, then your mind is going to dance around and make it make sense. So based on what you want, that's what makes sense. That's what you intellectually are going to defend, which again shows which one's higher, which one's deeper, which one's a more expression of self. And therefore, after a person is going to delve with his mind into the concept of this nullification that we've been discussing, kifi yicholto, as much as is his ability, the deep desire to be absolutely nullified to God, as in the beginning of this chapter we spoke about the forefathers, the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their absolute nullification, God's chariot, every single second of their being, with every single part of their being. And we would love that, but by us, it's during the moments when we are serving with those body parts that we are serving, or the lesser but still amazing nullification of the prophets, that literally God speaking through their mouths. And where do I shine in with this whole amazing, complete nullification of self to God? Well, what should you realize? This is what you should tell yourself. This is your point of comfort. Since I'm really much too small to do that. I'm no Abraham, no Isaac, and no Jacob. I'm not even a prophet. I mean, maybe we are. But if I think I'm way too small, I'm too small, the source of my soul is too small, my intellect is too small, I can't be God's chariot like that. I can't be his tabernacle like that, to truly hold and contain the oneness of God through my entire being. Because no thought of mine grasps him at all. Not one bit of understanding. Not one trait. Nothing like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Nothing even like any of the prophets. Nope, not me. I don't cut it anywhere. No problem. You can take very strong comfort. If so, this is my commitment. I'm going to make God a home. I'm going to make God a tabernacle. I'm going to be his palace. My involvement, now here the Rebbe says generically the study of Torah, even though before we emphasized really Jewish law as the primary way of doing this. But I'm going to study it as much as my time allotments allow, as much as the reality of my life allows. Having fixed times to study. And of course, whenever Hasidus speaks about these fixed times to study, Hasidus always says fixed in time and fixed in soul. Meaning you could have a time on your clock, like let's say you study Tuesday night, 8:30 Central Standard Time. But let's say you're sitting and your picture's off and you're either physically distracted or mentally distracted. There's a lot of noise going on. There's a lot of other stuff going on in your brain, inside, outside, both. Well, it's a fixed time, but it's not fixed inside you, because in you're all over the place. So we mean really fixed, really committed. This is the time, and you are there. You are focused. You are engaged by Yom B'Layla, by day and by night. Because according to Jewish law, a man, at least, has this obligation to learn Torah at least twice a day, morning and evening. A woman and a man, since I'm saying that, just to clarify what I meant, women and men have different obligations in terms of the study of Torah. Because studying Torah is a time-bound positive commandment. When is the time? Always. Whenever you can. As long as you're not doing something else that legitimately disqualifies you, you've got to be studying Torah. So that's a time-bound positive commandment. It's time-bound, always. And it's positive. Do this, study. And women are exempt from time-bound positive commandments for a very strong reason. Because God said your ultimate role is to be a mother. And if you're being a mother, your time is not really your own. And therefore, how could you be bound by time-bound commandments? You're superseding all of them with being a mother. I think that's fascinating, because as many of us are at different stages and ages in this class, for how many years of your life are you involved in being a mother? Let's say very roughly the first 20, maybe when I'm married yet, maybe once you're 45 or 50, your children are already older, maybe when you're 40. And yet your entire life, for 120 plus years, you are exempt from time-bound positive commandments, because it's so important to be a mother. It's so important to be dedicated, which is a tremendous lesson and perspective for us. Which doesn't mean women can't do them. Of course you can, but you're doing them because you're choosing to do them. But there are really two dimensions to the study of Torah. There's the commandment to study, time-bound positive, and there's the obligation to know. Like, you don't have to study, but somehow mystically, magically, you got to know. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe says that if only men would only know what a woman needs to know, that man will be in great shape. Because, of course, we have to know everything we need to know to live a Jewish life. And, of course, we have to know all of Hasidic thought, because that's what inspires us and connects us to God and keeps our Judaism alive and growing. So we have a tremendous obligation to know, and therefore we have to find the time to learn, but we don't have this obligation of learning, time-bound. So that's why, but in the Talmud, it speaks of a man who, again, now officially that man's supposed to be learning all day long. Caveat is, unless he's doing something else that he needs to do, such as eating or sleeping or praying or earning a living to support himself and his family. So once you start whittling away all those times from always, you might not be left with much of anything. And therefore the sages said, at least make sure you have to learn always, but you have all these obligations that prevent you from learning any time, twice a day. So every man should have twice a day a fixed time to study. And the Rebbe is saying, so at least then in this twice a day allotment, when you're studying, you can be God's home. Now you could say, well, I could study 6 hours a day. Great. So you can be God's home for those 6 hours a day. I can study 10 hours a day. Great. I can study 20 minutes a day. Okay. Well, at least for 20 minutes every day. You are God's home. This is, of course, this idea of twice a day is as it's explained there in the laws of the study of Torah. As our sages say, at least, I mean, we want you to study Torah all day long, but at least this fixed study time in the morning and in the evening. So therefore, the Rebbe says, look what's going on here. This is amazing. You started off feeling low and dejected and didn't think too highly of yourself. And then you're thinking of our glorious history and the patriarchs and the prophets who have such a relationship with God. They're God's home. God's energy is flowing through them. And you're like, awesome, but that's got nothing to do with my reality. And the Rebbe says, it could. You're not as nullified. You're not as holy. You're not as spiritual. But you could study Jewish law. And as you do so, you're God's home the same way they're God's home for the duration of the time of study. So how should you feel? You should feel amazing. You should feel unbelievably happy. I can be God's home. And this is true. And I don't know. I mean, nobody responded in the beginning of the class, but I was wondering if anyone, since we did begin this last week already, really learned some Jewish law over the week and really was focused on thinking, wow, this is so cool. I just think I'm studying Jewish law, but actually at this moment, God has a home and his home is in my mind, my soul. At this moment, I am giving God a home. The whole purpose of creation happening right now inside of me. So the Rebbe said, so his heart's going to rejoice. You're going to feel so happy. Remember, that was our goal. Both in chapter 33 and 34, we said, you're not feeling so happy. I want you to feel happy. Here's how. A connection to God will make you feel happy. Achieving the purpose of creation will make you feel happy. Doing the impossible will make you feel happy. You and the patriarchs and the prophets, all on the same page, all giving God a home. And someone just sent a private message that, yes, every day this week, she learned Jewish law for this reason. Amazing. And I hope many other people were doing so, paid more attention with their Jewish law, added or thinking how they're going to add, because this is very practically translatable. It's not like, well, how do I apply this?
I think I'll just say that I didn't add. I mean, but my husband always does like halacha by the dinner table. But
now you paid attention?
I don't know that I didn't pay attention, but it just felt more like, wow, this is exciting. It just impacted deeper because the understanding of how precious it is to Hashem. That was just it made that shift in my thinking. That's all.
I think that's what Hasidus does. Exactly what Firma said. Hasidus makes the study of Jewish law exciting because now we know how spiritually significant it is. And that's very exciting. Anyone else? Anyone else did something different this week because of this? Hopefully this coming week. This is, as I said, very practical application. So the Rebbe says, it was a yismach libo. You're going to be so happy. The yagel, you're going to rejoice. V'yiten hoda'a al chelko b'simcha b'tuv levav. You're going to be thanking God for your good portion. Wow, God, you gave me such a blessed life. You gave me such a good life. I can be your home so easily, so naturally. I just have to like prioritize, tweak my day a bit to be your home. It's amazing. Now, again, we're thinking of the person who is studying twice a day. So therefore, the Rebbe says, you are rejoicing that twice a day you are hosting God. Think of it like that. I'm God's host. That's a nice line. That's a nice thought. That's a beautiful thought. I'm hosting God. I'm giving God a home. God wants a home. I'm giving him one. I give him one twice a day. I give him one once a day. Esther, Serena?
Yeah. So how does that sounds kind of ephemeral, like during that time we're hosting God, and where we're used to the concept of since Sinai, mitzvahs we've done become part of this world. So this kind of sounds like, oh, that's nice. During that time, it's activated, and then
what happens afterwards?
Yeah.
Right. So that's just what we're going to talk about. Exactly what the Rebbe is going to say. And what about the rest of the day? But we're starting with this thought of what's being accomplished then. And thank you so much. I can see your face and not a black screen. I so appreciate that. But during these moments, these are like the high moments when I literally, God's inside of me. I'm God's home. Now you could say, well, doesn't that happen with every commandment? And the answer is no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. Every commandment you do, you're fusing with God, you're connecting with God, you're giving substance and form to his will, you're bringing down blessings to yourself, you're nullifying yourself to God. But this specific, ultimate goal that you're God's home does not happen with Shabbos, does not happen with kosher, does not happen with being careful in gossip or honesty. It doesn't. Who are you to be God's home? How can you be God's home? You need to be so refined and hallowed and spiritual, or you need to be studying Jewish law, and then you could be God's home. Because of me, because of what Jewish law is, and now I'm the vehicle of Jewish law. Like Jewish law now has a body, has a brain, has a heart, has a soul, and it's mine. And that's why through Jewish law, God can have a home inside of me, where otherwise, who am I to deserve that? I don't. But through Jewish law, I can. So therefore, imagine twice a day. If you study twice a day, you could do this. If you have based on, of course, your time, maybe you could study an hour a day. Maybe you study 3 times a day. Everyone according to their time constraints. As much as God allows you to, because again, how the Rebbe is looking at this, as the Rebbe wrote this in 1700s, the reality of surviving financially was so harsh. Obviously, they weren't going for granite countertops or for vacations or for a new whatever. They were going for survival, for enough food to live, for enough warmth, for shoes without holes, whatever was the basics they needed. And literally, you could work all day long to achieve that. You get up early, you'd work all day can mean as long as it's light outside, and then you're done. And all your earnings could just achieve that, or maybe a little less than that, or hopefully a little more than that. So therefore, if a person to say, I'm going to carve away from those moments, which I need to earn a living to sustain myself, my wife, and my children, to pay for my children's education, to pay for their weddings, to make sure we have extra food for Shabbos, what my needs. But I'm going to take away from some of that time that I'm supposed to designate to earn my living, and I'm going to be studying Torah to be God's home. Well, obviously, if I have a tremendous financial pressure, I'm going to feel a big pressure how many minutes I can carve away. I know I have to learn twice a day. I'm following God's will, but is twice a day for 15 minutes each time, or for a half an hour each time, or for 5 minutes each time, or for an hour each time? Well, for many sincere, pious Jews, our grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, because we wouldn't be alive today, no, we're Jewish if those weren't our ancestors. So for our ancestors, it was really a calculation of how much money could they earn taking away those minutes. And based on that, how many minutes they could give. So if God made your income come in more easily, more bountifully, you can give God more time. Of course, you want to be his home. And if it was very, very tight and very, very difficult, and every penny was so hard to come by, you felt a very big pressure, and therefore you couldn't give God an hour twice a day. Maybe you could even give him a half an hour twice a day because you needed that time to work. So therefore, the Rebbe is saying here that each person is going to allocate, is going to calculate based on what they can afford. Now, we maybe are in a different situation, and we don't have to like, maybe our pressures is more like, oh, I have to get up earlier, I have to go to bed later, I have carpool, and I have laundry, and I have my work responsibilities. We want to have the same intensity of pressure of there's a certain amount of daylight hours, and I gotta create a certain amount of money in those daylight hours. So maybe it's easier for us. But we still could say, listen, it's easier, but I still can't give God 6 hours a day. I don't have it. Okay. But the Rebbe's perspective is give him as much as you can. And for each person, that's going to be different based, as the Rebbe's writing this, for many people on their financial constraints, and maybe for us on other constraints. Give him what you can. So therefore, the Rebbe says, so if God will make it easier for you, and your financial situation will come with greater ease, more bountifully, more quickly, not requiring every single moment of these daylight hours, as I told you, Dam Yosef Ometz. Well, then, of course, you would study more. So the Rebbe is saying, as you're giving God, we're going to say here, we're just making up a situation here. So we're going to say that this person is studying twice a day for half an hour a day. Twice a day, each time for half an hour. He doesn't only want to be God's home an hour a day. He wishes he was God's home all day long. But right now, he can only afford, as he sees it, to be God's home twice a day, a half an hour each time. So what is he thinking? He's thinking, I wish I didn't have to spend so much time working. I wish I could, win that lottery instead of some anonymous guy in California. And then I could just give God all day long. And then all day long, I'd be God home, and I want to be God's home all day long, but I can't afford it. I've got to work. So as you're working all day, you're thinking, if I was a rich man, if I had more money, I wouldn't be doing this work. I would be studying Jewish law and being God's home. Well, what does that thought accomplish? So the Rebbe goes on to say, there is a concept in Jewish law that a good thought God joins to a deed. Meaning, you sometimes have this fleeting thought like, oh, I'd love to go cook in that communal kitchen. It'd be such a nice thing to do today. And then like an hour later, you're like, oh gosh, where'd that hour go? Oh, well, that was a nice thought. That's not what we're talking about. We are saying that you, following this example, said, I today am taking an hour of my time and I'm going to that communal kitchen and I'm cooking to make meals for sick family people that people are sick in the city and they need these meals. Beautiful, beautiful kindness. And if you have children home, you get a babysitter and you make sure you have your car and everything's ready to go. And then the babysitter cancels. The car stalls in the middle and you don't get there and you spend the next hour dealing with getting your car towed. Then our sages say a good thought is considered a good deed. You 100% committed to do this. You did everything you could to make this happen. God didn't let. Sometimes God doesn't let. He's got other plans for you. God says, don't worry. In my head, it's exactly as if you did it. So the Rebbe is taking this concept, which is how it's normally understood, as I just explained. It sometimes happens to you. Let's say, it's not such an unrealistic concept. Let's say you're having guests coming for your Shabbos meal, and you invited a guest, and you're so excited, and these are people that don't normally have a Shabbos meal. You're so happy to host them, and you made the house extra clean because of that, and you made extra meals, and you warned all your children to be on absolute angelic behavior, and they don't. God says it's as if you did it. So this does happen in our life. Here, it's not exactly like that at all. But the Alter Rebbe, we can rely on him. He's saying, here it works the same way. So you have those 2 half-an-hour slots where you're studying. And you're thinking, if I had more time, I would study more. But God, I have to work all day. If I didn't have to work, I'd be studying. If I mean this sincerely, if I didn't have to work, I'd be studying. Well, I'm going to be polishing my nails. If I didn't have to work, I'd be studying. I so crave to be your home. I'd be so excited to be your home, but I have to work. The Rebbe says, as you think that thought all day long, that thought creates a certain level of reality. On a certain level, it's as if you're God's home. The thought itself has that power. So there are those following this example, twice a day, half hours, where you are God's home. And all day long, as you're thinking about it and wanting it and committing that if you had the resources to not work, you'd be doing it. On a certain level, you are God's home then. That is the first option the Rebbe gives to us for what is supposed to do all the rest of the day when we're not studying, when we can't study, when, again, we might have many other obligations. Think about it. Commit, if you could, you would. And on a certain level, it happens. So that's an amazing innovation of the Alter Rebbe. Total innovation of the Alter Rebbe, very powerful. So you could say, well, no, it's sort of like if, and I have to be thinking this all day, and maybe I'm going to think about other things, and maybe it's not really an honest thought, because I don't know, I would be studying all day long, and probably other things will get in the way. I mean, I would be studying more, of course. But I might forget to think about this, or my thoughts might not be so sincere. So it's a bit of a comfort, but it might not feel as realistic as we need. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe doesn't stop here. The Alter Rebbe gives us another way of being God's home. This other way is a complete innovation of the Alter Rebbe. Meaning, again, just to understand the point, originally we spoke in chapter 33, well, you could be God's home if you internalize a belief in the oneness of God. Well, that's a very philosophical concept, and it makes sense. If you're so refined and you've spiritualized yourself and you're truly feeling all is God and there's nothing but God, it makes sense you're God's home. Now we say, well, but I don't know if I can do that. Okay, you could study Jewish law. That I could do. As long as you're studying Jewish law, you are God's home. Oh, great. Where do we get this from? The Talmud. All right. Very strong source. But what about the rest of the day? As we were asked last week, right away, very obvious question. So the Alter Rebbe is weaving together this other idea of the Talmud. If you were thinking about it on a certain level, it's like you're doing it. But it's only on a certain level. So we want more than that. So the Alter Rebbe says, all right, I'll share a secret with you. I'm going to tell you that there's actually another way to be God's home. Doesn't say it clearly anyplace. I'm telling you, there's another way to be God's home. And that other way, you could spend many hours of the day involved in without trying to get yourself to think, if I was a rich man, then I would. You'll naturally be doing this. What is this other unbelievable path? Charity. The Alter Rebbe says, Staka, charity enables you to be God's home. And since for high majority of us, we're not born heirs to some, somebody else's wealth, one way or another, we work for our money. And we put a lot of time into working for our money. And all the time we put into working for our money is part of being God's home. You can say, wait a minute. I'm not giving away every penny I earn to God. So why would all that? I'm like, what's going on here? The Rebbe says, it's very simple. If you are giving 10%, the Alter Rebbe actually wants you to give at least 20, if not more. But we'll just say if you're giving 10%, if you're giving 10%, to create the 10%, you have to work all day. Because if you worked all week long and earned $1,000, and then you're going to give away 100, well, to give the 100, you need the 1,000. Well, to have 1,000, you needed to work all week. So all week, you're involved in creating that charity all week long. As the Rebbe says, Begam, and also Shar Hayom Kulo, for the rest of the day, besides thinking, if I didn't have to work, then I truly would be studying now. When you're involved in your business, you are also a place where God dwells by giving the charity that he gives from his efforts. We work hard for our money. It doesn't make a difference how much money you earn. You work hard for your money. Now the Rebbe says, why am I saying that you're going to be God's home by giving charity? Because when you give charity, you are so God-like. It's so natural for God to dwell inside of you because he has so much space. You're like him. You're emulating him. Just as God is compassionate, we are compassionate. Now, we might not think of charity as great compassion. We might just think of it as like, I don't know, this is what God wants, this is what I do. But if you think about what you're doing, it's amazing. It's an amazing act of compassion. Why is charity so amazing? Because we work hard for our money. And most of us always seem to need more or think we need more than we have. And we definitely have lots and lots of expenses. And yet, without thinking about it, we just slice off a certain amount and say, this isn't mine. This is to give away. If you told someone else what you did, who was not familiar with this concept, they'd be like, what? But don't you need it? And you'd be like, what does that have to do with anything? Of course I need it. Of course I need much more than I have. So then how are you giving away so much? The two don't connect. This isn't mine. This is the money God gave me to distribute to charity. It's an amazing God-like thing we do. And for many of us, we do it without even thinking about it. It's just what we do. But if you think about it, in this world, it's very interesting because Hasidus, very often, when it speaks of the stresses of exile, it speaks of financial stress. And it's very interesting to me because there's a lot of other stresses besides financial stress. There's stresses in relationships, there's health issues, there's children issues. There's a whole litany of things we could discuss as the stresses of exile. And yet Hasidus always go back to financial stress. Maybe because it's overarching, the one that affects so many people. And yet with all that financial stress, we give away. I have expenses, got nothing to do with it. This money's not mine. A very, very God-like thing to do. And therefore the Rebbe is saying, because you are so emulating God, when you give charity, of course you're God's home. Where would God not want to dwell if not inside someone who is literally emulating him? And that's what happens when we give charity. And as it's explained, again, the Rebbe is giving more sources for this concept. Of course, this is his concept, but he's pulling sources that support it. So Tikkunim is a section of the Zohar. So there's a Kabbalistic reference. Chesed droya yemina. The previous quote, Mahu rachum afatahe rachum, just as God is compassionate, you should be compassionate, was from the Talmud. That's the revealed dimension of Torah. We also see this in the esoteric dimension of Torah, in the Tikkunim section of Zohar, that says kindness is God's right arm. So as your right arm extends, giving the charity, writing the check, helping the person, helping the cause, helping the organization, it's like your right arm is an extension of God's right arm, because charity is his right arm. Now, of course, arm as that giving, and right, because the right always symbolizes kindness and giving. The left is holding back, judgment. The right is the giving, the embracing. Charity is God's right arm. Your right arm and God's have become one when you give charity. So, of course, he's inside of you now. Of course, you're housing him. But I'm only giving 20%. Notice how the Rebbe slips that in. So the Rebbe says, of course, you're giving 20%, but you're only giving 20%. So you could say, well, it didn't resolve my issue, right? All the Rabbeim, actually starting with the Baal Shem Tov, they all speak of this concept of giving 20% to charity. Of course, from the letter of the law, you're required to give 10%, but starting with, and there's a quote in the Talmud that seems to imply you shouldn't give more than 20%. And starting with the Baal Shem Tov, all the Rebbeim push to give more than 20%. As the Alter Rebbe discusses, not here, but in other places in the Tanya. So the Rebbe is saying, well, you're giving 20%, but that's only 20% of your money. There's another 80% of your money. So how are you God's home all day? And even though you're only giving 20%, but that 20% lifts up the other 4/5, lifts up the other 80%. You earned your 1,000, you gave your 200, your other 800 that's in your bank account for about 5 more seconds is also being affected by this 200 that was given away. Leos Mishkan, the shifter Yisparach, to also be part of being God's home. Now, how can we say that? I mean, that's cool, and I explained it to you before, but what is the Alter Rebbe relying on to say that? Meaning, again, the Alter Rebbe here is giving us these tremendous innovations. Because you're working all day to earn the 1,000, and because you're giving 20%, which means you're giving 200, really, you're God's home for all $1,000 for all days work. I mean, it's cool, it's amazing, it's wonderful. Well, why? Well, because you would only be able to give 200 if you earned 1,000. Okay, it's logical also, but what's the Alter Rebbe relying on to say that? So the Alter Rebbe now gives a source for this concept. I'm not making this up. I can show you a source. What's the source? As we know from the sages, the sages say that charity is equivalent to all of the sacrifices. Meaning, when you offer a sacrifice, the Hebrew word for sacrifice is karban, because the root word of karban is karov, to come close to God. So if you want to come close to God, you're offering this physical sacrifice, this animal, this wine, oil, flour, all of these physical items were tools of coming close to God. Sacrifices had a few goals. A sacrifice could be to attain atonement. A sacrifice could bring down sustenance, to bring down the blessings you need. And the sacrifice could be to be close to God. When you offered oila, when you offered a burnt offering, the whole thing was just for God. Let the fire consume it all. This isn't about me. This is just God, just a means of me being closer to God. So the sages say that charity is equivalent to all of it. So that means that now you could say, well, they're saying it's really good to give charity, which of course they are. But the words of the sages are very precise. So if the sages are saying that charity is equivalent to all the offerings, they mean that there's a very, very, very detailed, precise connection between the function of charity and the function of the offerings. Well, what did we know about the offerings? So the Rebbe says, we know. Every day, when they would offer, twice a day actually, an animal to God on a regular basis, that one animal that was burnt up elevated the entire animal kingdom. And with each offering, they would also have this flour offering, flour and oil. And as they're offering up that handful of flour and burning it on the altar, all of the vegetation kingdom is elevated. So therefore, the Rebbe says, what do we see about an offering? That we offer something, and what that represents, the totality that emerged from, it's all affected. Because all the animals are elevated, all the vegetation is elevated. So the Rebbe says similarly, when you're offering your 20% on God's altar, by giving it away, I need it, I could sure use it, it's not mine, I'm giving it away. When you do that, What this emerged from, the total sum, is also elevated. Just as this charity makes you God's home, the earning of that money to create the charity also is elevated. Also, you are God's home as you're working to create that money to give that 20% to charity. Now we are not done, but we are up to towards the very end of the chapter, and we're just kind of one other concept to discuss in terms of how else, when you're giving a certain amount of charity, it really affects the totality of the money. So I'm sort of wondering, should I push and finish it or not? But I think we discussed a lot of concepts tonight, so I think we'll stop here, and we will, God willing, finish off this concept and this chapter next week. I would like to invite everyone. I was actually planning on doing this next week, but God willing, next week will be my new grandson's circumcision, the bris. So in 2 weeks, I'd like to invite everyone that is in Chicago and is able to come to my house to have the Tanya class in person, because this is the year of gathering. It's the year of Hakel, the year of gathering. Therefore, it's very special to actually in person connect to each other and study Torah in person. We will also have a Zoom for those that cannot make it in person, but it'd be very special to also meet in person. So that is, God willing, in 2 weeks. Anyone have something they would like to thank God for, they would like to share? Anyone have something they would like to share to thank God for from this past week?
Can I ask you, I want to go back to today's class, just to confirm if I understood correctly.
Of course, ma'am.
From everything what you said, I take out from today's class 2 things. In order to be a God's home, we study laws as much as we can. Good. But also, to be God's home, it's means to give. That means another way to be a God's home is to give charity.
Exactly.
Is this correct?
Exactly.
So, and since in order to give charity, you need to work. So while you're working and having in mind that, not just in mind, but you kind of promising and for sure you give portion of your money to the charity, that means you can be God's home all day long.
Exactly. For however many hours as you're working. It might feel like all day long. And the other additional point in between those two was, so the first point is, Miriam said correctly, I'm glad you're summarizing, because this is very practical and very translatable, and we want to make sure we all got it. First point, as much as you can, study God's law. Second point, if you can study God's law because you're busy, think, God, if I wasn't busy, I'd be studying your law. If you made my life easier and you took away some of these responsibilities, I'd be studying your law. If I didn't have to work as many hours as I'm working, I'd be studying your law. That very thought also on a certain level is considered like studying, and therefore on a certain level you're God's home by virtue of that thought as you're doing whatever else you're doing in your life. And then additionally, as you said, this tremendous innovation of the Rebbe, this tremendous opening that really for many of us, it really is many hours of our day as we're working to earn the money of which a percentage is being given to charity. All that time we're God's home.
So that brings me to conclusions. The most important for God, it's our charity.
Well, it's hard to say that because there's so many most importance. And it's sort of like, I think like the Lubavitcher Rebbe, on almost any day when the Rebbe would speak, for sure this is the Rebbe's favorite day of the whole year. This is the most important day of the whole year. This is the most spiritually significant day of the whole year. But then tomorrow or next week, you're like, I'm so confused. Now it's this day. I thought it was last week. So I would not feel comfortable saying it's the most important. I would say it's definitely up there in like the top 3. There's so much about charity. It's so significant. It's so powerful in bringing redemption. It's so powerful in bringing salvation. But there's also tremendous, tremendous, tremendous significance in studying God's Torah. So I can't say it's more important than that. And of course,
And
there's tremendous significance in prayer and in Psalms. So again, I can't say it's more important. They're accomplishing different things, but it's definitely up there. I would say in the top 3, for sure, in the top 5. So it's definitely something that as we do, and it's so doable. You just do it. You just commit to it. You just
right,
do
right,
it. And then
right.
look what you're accomplishing.
Yeah, and then I forgot, yesterday we're talking about percentage, how you calculate from your gross or from your net?
From your net.
Okay. So the taxes we pay, it's not part
It's
of
not
our
your money. It's Uncle Sam's. It's not your money. So you don't have to give
Even if
charity on
they-
Uncle Sam's money.
even if the part money goes to homeless, it's still not.
Not
in
your
my
money.
town.
It's
Not
not
my-
your money. It's not your
Okay,
money.
so
You don't have
the
to give
only
charity
money-
because it's not your money.
Okay, only money which goes to
Only
my
your
account.
money is what you have to give charity off of. It's
Okay.
Uncle Sam's. It's not yours. You don't have to give charity off of it. Absolutely.
Got you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone have something they would like to thank God for?
Yes, hi, it's Dottie.
Dottie, yeah, my gosh. How long were you away
Hi.
for?
Almost 2 weeks.
Wow, what a gift.
I'm telling you, it was awesome. I want to thank God I got home okay because it is such a schlep. It's two plane rides and a layover, and it's just a very big trip. And I also want to thank God everybody's okay. And it was a wonderful trip. I got to know my grandson and there, it's like in Belgrade, there's hardly a Jew there. So when I'm davening, I'm thinking, I'm here to make a Kiddush Hashem. And it turns out where my son lives is in the old Jewish neighborhood. And he showed me on the buildings, it shows this Jewish person lived there, you know, and then he found the Jewish cemetery. And oh my gosh, it's like a Jew came to bring, you know,
Elevate
good
those sparks.
I'm telling you, I felt it. It was such a desert. But anyways, I got quality time with my children, which is a bit, you know, because they're so far away. Once a year I get to be with them, whatever. Everyone's got their peckle. But anyway, I'm grateful I got home okay and back, you know, back in the saddle. And thank you for your
We're
beautiful
so
prayer.
happy you had that opportunity. I was
And I was-
so happy to hear that you were able to do that. It was so
Thank you so much.
special.
I just want you to tell Miriam that a Jew has this consciousness about charity. Other, you know, what makes a Jew is that he's so worried that he's got to give back and he's got to make sure everybody's okay. This is this responsibility of a Jew. That's why we're so different than other peoples of the world, because we're worried about everybody else. They don't worry about us, but we worry about them. So when Miriam gives charity, she's being like such a Yiddish maidel, because she's giving charity, because that's what Jewish people do. So I just want to mention that, Miriam, man, just give that charity, and you're the essence. You're doing it, baby. That's it. That's great. So I just want to say that. Okay.
Thank you. And so to the
No.
rest of us. Anyone else have something they want to add, something they want to thank God for?
Certainly thank you for everybody for your tefillos last week. And I posted on the group that my son's surgery went well and he's recovering. And Baruch Hashem, yom, good to hear each day that is progressing better and better.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
She always has good news. And I guess I want to thank God for the birth of a healthy grandson. We do not take it for granted. And I do have to say this child, which is Kanina, their fourth, managed to stay in the womb the longest. You know, she has sort of a track record of giving birth very, very early. And we're very grateful. He was born healthy and full term. And thank God. Don't take it for granted. I'm very, very grateful. We should all merit to have children and have healthy children, have grandchildren, have healthy grandchildren. And not to have that
Amen.
on our
Amen.
hearts. Just be
Amen.
the given. So
I hope your new ankles bris is in Yerushalayim.
Amen.
In the
That was such a nice place to make it as I'm starting to
Rebbe-
cook now.
With the Rebbe being Sandek.
Amen. Okay. All right. We're ready to have it booked. Nobody else can take it away from us because Sarah's already saying it now. So we got first dibs. This is on Zoom. Nobody can claim anything else. We will take that. No, actually, my cooking's not for the bris. It's for them, for food. So yes, it's Baruch Hashem. They should be in Yerushalayim, and we'll be able to see the what really is accomplished by every Jewish child being born. As the Rebbe says, that every Jewish child being born is another step toward redemption, because redemption comes when all those souls are born. So we should truly see everything we've all accomplished soul by soul. So it's actually very interesting, because this week's Torah portion, in the beginning of the portion, and of course in the Rebbe's talk on it, actually speaks about a circumcision, but I don't think I thought that was interesting for me personally, but I don't believe it's the part they pulled out. They did pull out probably part about a Jewish child. So the Rebbe here is actually speaking about the founding of the Lubavitch Yeshiva, which was founded by the fifth Lubavitch Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, and speaking of how all the students in this yeshiva, in this school, are all the soldiers, David's soldiers of the house of David, fighting David's wars against those that disgrace the coming of the redemption. As Maimonides explains, that Mashiach is coming to fight God's wars and to be victorious. And especially in our generation, the Rebbe says that we are the third generation from the fifth Lubavitch Rebbe, from the Rebbe Rashab. We have the Rashab, we have his son and successor, the Rebbe Yatz, and then we have his son-in-law and successor, the Rebbe. So we are now 3 generations of the Rebbe Rashab and his students, all of these soldiers of the house of David, and we've completed it, like 3. We're done. Chazaka. We've completed this war of the soldiers of the house of David, in bringing the redemption that's literally coming through the Davidic King Mashiach. And like the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe said in his lifetime in this world, that we've already completed everything. I heard that a long time ago. We've already completed everything. We've already completed all work. We're standing ready to receive the Redeemer, to receive the Davidic King Mashiach. And it's been a long time since, and there says it's been 40 years since. And it's been 40 years of the leadership of the Rebbe, 40 years since the passing of the previous Rebbe. And it says in Torah that a period of 40 years, you have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, the heart to understand. So we should be able to integrate and internalize this message that the previous Rebbe told us over 40 years before. We're done, it's done, we're standing ready to greet the Redeemer. And especially in our generation, we're already in the year of the Tzaddik, which is an allusion to the Rebbe's age of that year. It was 90 years of the Rebbe. And in here we connect it to the Tehillim, to the Psalm that speaks about. Psalm 89 concludes with those that disgrace the heels of the coming of the Redeemer. And then the victory of this. And as we have in chapter 90 of the Psalm, again, relating to the Rebbe's age, at that time, speaking of the tabernacle, speaking of the temple, speaking of the redemption. And the Rebbe said, the main thing we should know, beyond what we've already said, and this talk is an unbelievable talk to learn, in case you're just looking for something extra to learn, as we're discussing a specialist to learn. Beyond the fact that there exists the existence of Mashiach, the Redeemer, this spark of Mashiach inside every single Jew, every single one of us, in the core of our soul, we have a spark of the Redeemer, we have a spark of Mashiach. There's also the existence of Mashiach in the literal way, the person. As we know, in every generation, there's someone born from the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Mashiach, who is worthy to be the Redeemer. As it says there, that's a direct quote from the Bartanura on Rus. Someone who's worthy from his righteousness to be the Redeemer. And when the time will come, God will reveal himself to him and send him. A quote we have here from the Chassam Sofer, from the Stei Chemed, from others that say these words that the Rebbe quotes again and again and again. In every generation, there's a Redeemer. He's waiting. He's waiting to be given the signal by God. When he gets that signal, he will redeem. And if only things that are not so good did not get in the way, did not obstruct, he would have been revealed and come a long time ago. And now, through the proclamation of the Rebbe Yatz, the leader of the generation, the Rebbe says, the Mashiach of the generation. The Rebbe says that this soul of Mashiach is shining through the soul of the leader of the generation. that the leader of the generation contains all the souls of all the Jews of the generation. So in the leader of the generation is that soul, the potential Mashiach waiting to be revealed. So through the proclamation of the Rebbe Rayatz, the previous Rebbe, the leader of the generation, the Mashiach generation, that we've already concluded everything. All matters of service were already done. We're standing ready to greet Mashiach. So in our days, this is an edited talk of the Rebbe, in our days, all of the barriers are nullified. They've fallen away. And since that's so, since all those obstructions that are making this road convoluted and obstructed are all gone, we have not only the existence of Mashiach, because of course the Rebbe just proved by these quotes that we've always had the existence of Mashiach. We've always had Mashiach in the wings waiting to be revealed. But we don't only have the existence of Mashiach, we have the revelation of it. And now we only need to receive Mashiach in actuality. That he exists, he's always existed. But now he doesn't just exist. He's revealed. Maybe the Rebbe means because the world all knows who he is. I don't know. But the Rebbe said, he's revealed. He's open. No barriers. So what's left when he exists and is revealed? We've got to accept him. And since that's so, it's understood that every single detail of our life has to be penetrated with Mashiach, including the most basic things of our life, like eating and drinking. That when we're eating and drinking, we should be like, I don't want this. This is what I want. This hot dog, this tuna, this peanut butter. I want the messianic feast. I want the real fish, the fish of the Leviathan. I want the ultimate meat, the meat of the Shor Habar. I want the real drink, the aged wine since the beginning of time, the Yain HaMeshumar. And you should so much want it, the Rebbe says, that after you finish eating, you should say, God, I'm hungry. Why am I hungry? Because this wasn't what I wanted. I wanted the Leviathan. I wanted the Shor Habar. I wanted the Yain HaMeshumar. I don't want this food. Like, your children say all the time, open up a fridge full of food, there's nothing to eat. So you had a whole meal and you're like, I didn't eat, God. It didn't count. I'm still hungry. And therefore you say to God, I don't know if I can do your commandment. Because you say that we're supposed to bless you after we eat. But it says in the verse, you will eat and you will be satisfied and you will bless God. Well, I ate, but I'm not satisfied. I'm still hungry. I'm hungry for the foods of Mashiach. God, you need to put us on the table of Mashiach with the foods of Mashiach so we truly will eat and truly be satisfied and truly bless you. We should see it revealed in our world with the physical foods in the most practical way. It shouldn't have to be something we discuss and think about and long for. It should be, like the Rebbe always goes back to this vision, sitting by the table with the messianic foods, the Leviathan, the Shor Habar, the Yain HaMeshumar, in the most simple, literal truth. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank
And very
you.
soon, the rest will be
Thank
your
you.
Shalayim.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Amen.
Thank you so
Amen.
much.
Thank you.